Welcome to the Automation World Get Your Questions Answered podcast series, where we connect with industry experts to get the answers you need about industrial automation technologies. I'm David Greenfield, Director of Content for Automation World, and the question we'll be answering in this episode is, what is industrial single-pair Ethernet? Now, to answer this question, I'm joined today by McKenzie Reed of Harting, a supplier of industrial connectors, cabling, and computing products. So, McKenzie, since single-pair Ethernet is a relatively new entrant on the industrial technology scene, let's get right to the main question. Just what is industrial single-pair Ethernet, and how is it different from the kinds of industrial Ethernet cabling already used widely in industry?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that. And firstly, I'd like to just start off saying thank you for having me. But just diving right into it, single-pair Ethernet is a new physical technology. The types of Ethernet that the industry is currently used to is both fast Ethernet, which is around 100 megabits per second with a few twisted pairs, as well as gigabit Ethernet, which is from 250 megabits per second up to 2.5 gigabits per second, with a total of 4 twisted pairs. That's 8 total wires and bidirectional communication. Single pair Ethernet is exactly what it says. It's just a single pair of wires. It's typically a gray wire and a blue wire in the types of cables that are being designed today. And that's rated for speeds of 10 megabit per second up to into the gigabit speeds across those twisted pair that are bidirectional.
So why is this difference between the two types of cabling? Why is that important for industrial communications?
It's a great question. It's particularly important because for the first time, you're able to reach these speeds and distances using copper wiring technology. And also for the first time, it's cost effective to do so, especially at the 10 megabit per second speed. Previously, when you're talking about these types of Ethernet-based protocols and technology, it was a bit cost prohibitive to run some of these speeds, and it wasn't able to accomplish some of the distances that single-pair Ethernet is able to do today. So that's really some of the main differences, is that we're pushing the limits of the speed, and we're driving down the cost.
Okay, understood. Thanks for clarifying that. Now, to get into the technical specifics a bit more, what are the speeds and distances capable with single-pair Ethernet currently?
Sure. So the first one I'll touch on is 10 megabits per second, which has been rated up to 1,000 meters. That was a project that was recently completed by the organization IEEE under the project group 802.3 CG. Other speeds and distances include 100 megabits per second, currently rated for 15 meters, and the next rating that one will have is up to 40 meters. Gigabit speeds are already at 40 meters, so we're talking about 1 gigabit per second up to 40 meter length. And then there are going to be projects opened that are going to cover what's called multi-gig speed, which is 2.5, 5, and up to 10 gigabits per second, which the running consensus is that that'll be rated for up to 15 meters.
Are there any plans in the works at this point yet, at least, to increase these speed and distance factors that you just mentioned?
Yes. So there will be further projects starting in the future where, again, these limits are going to be pushed. Harting has done some of these tests independently in our testing facility that's located close to our German headquarters. But some of the speeds that we're anticipating for the future are 100 megabit per second between 200 and 500 meters, 1 gigabit per second between 150 and 200 meters, and multi-gigabit speed up to 50 meters.
Okay. So it can handle some fairly high-speed motion type applications. Is that a correct assumption there?
Correct. Yeah, the aim here is to really cover all manufacturing environments and all of the different speeds that are required in those manufacturing environments. So as you said, motion control and vision systems, they use a higher bandwidth of data, and they require higher speeds. But then when you're talking about control and monitoring devices, those normally sit around 100 megabit per second. And then once you're getting to the devices at the plant floor level, those are the ones that typically are operating about 10 megabit per second speeds.
Okay. Thanks, McKenzie. So, given the differentiating factors about single pair Ethernet that we've been discussing so far, what are the benefits that manufacturers should expect to get out of this new Ethernet technology? And by that, I mean, what can it deliver that the industrial Ethernet cabling industry uses now can't?
Great question. So, single pair Ethernet, we're planning to see the largest disruption at the plant floor level. So again, for the first time, you're going to be able to reach some of these speeds and distances that you've never been able to reach before, namely the 10 megabit per second at 1,000 meters. That's never been done with a copper connection before. So that's one that's very exciting. And then also, as a completely separate topic that encompasses single pair Ethernet, is what's called power over data line. If you're familiar with power over Ethernet, it's similar, but power over Ethernet requires a total of 4 wires, whereas power over data line can be accomplished using just the true single twisted pair up to a certain power rating. So that's another added benefit, is that some of these plant floor level devices that require an external power supply to power them can now incorporate that power into the same single pair Ethernet cable.
Okay. Can you give an example of some of the types of devices that can be powered with the power over data line capability that you were just speaking of?
Sure. So it's really going to be where we believe the biggest disruption in the industry is going to come from is at the plant floor level devices. So this is what's sometimes commonly referred to as the sensor and actuator network. These are ones that are operating, over very low powers, like an individual sensor that's mounted on a conveyor belt, or a vision system, like a proximity sensor that is mounted, close to a conveyor belt or towards some sort of machinery where parts are moving around. Those normally operate at low speeds and requiring low power. So the current rating of power over data line is for up to 50 watts. That's 50 watts. And then once you exceed that 50 watts, you can still accomplish power over data line by going to a 4 wire technology. And in that case, you're able to go, I believe, up to 200 watts in that rating. But really, the types of devices that we're talking about that are mainly going to benefit from single pair Ethernet are the ones, that may have traditionally been on a foundation field bus network. So, things like Profibus and Modbus, we're really expecting to see a large shift towards the Ethernet-based protocols. And even before single pair Ethernet, started hitting the market this year, we had been seeing that. So, as of 2018 numbers, the industrial Ethernet global footprint grew from 52% global market share to 59% global market share. While for the first time ever in the history of foundation field bus, it actually decreased 5% from 40% market share down to 35. So what that tells us is that new nodes that are coming online and new products that are being designed are already gravitating towards Ethernet-based protocols and away from foundation field bus. And single pair Ethernet is going to aid in doing that.
Provide that extra bit of further push to move things in the direction, as you noted, they're already going, but to kind of push them further to give added impetus for manufacturers to move forward with that.
Sure.
So are there any special connectors required for single pair Ethernet that are any different from the current types of connectors available for the type of standard industrial Ethernet that industry uses now?
Sure. So there have been purposely built and designed single pair Ethernet connectors from major industrial manufacturers. Harting is one of those manufacturers. As they started putting standards in place for single pair Ethernet, what they're doing for the first time is they're actually outlining specific connectors that all of these global standardization bodies are recommending to be used in the industrial environments that they're going to be placed in. This is a big step forward and a big movement, because typically the market has decided what connectors to use. And in some situations, an enterprise type connector, ones that are more suited for like data center use or in clean environments, they migrated their way into industrial environments that they weren't originally designed for, causing some inherent problems because of the lack of the design need for them to be in that environment. And, they just weren't rated for the environments that they were put into. So many manufacturers set out to purposely design a single pair Ethernet connector. IEC has given some of these connectors their own, code names or letter designations. The Harting one is called IEC 63171-6. And many of the global standards organizations are voting for this connector to be the industrial standard and the heavy industrial standard. So the one that's used in industrial automation environments, process automation environments, things where higher IP ratings are required. So we really put a lot of time in development, starting back in late 2015 and into 2016, designing the connector that just hit the market as of this year, 2020.
Okay. Now, you mentioned standards organizations there, so I guess I should clarify here. Is a single pair Ethernet on its way to becoming a standard, or any of the standards bodies behind the standardization of industrial single pair Ethernet yet?
Yes. So the project that I referenced earlier, IEEE 802.3, that group specifically has outlined the specifications for the different speeds and distances of single pair Ethernet. Other global standards body like TIA for transportation and ISO IEC have also begun projects with single pair Ethernet specification. Those three that I just mentioned, ISO IEC, TIA, and IEEE, have all voted that the Harting connector be used in industrial environments. And ODVA is currently in the process of moving multiple papers through review and publication to outline their specification for single pair Ethernet. And myself and a few colleagues actually sit within ODVA and are participating in that work, just as our colleagues at our German headquarters have sat within the other standards organizations that I just mentioned, moving those standards along, between 2016 and 2020.
Okay. And earlier you had mentioned how single pair Ethernet, is moving forward or moving the industry forward from transitioning from field bus to industrial Ethernet protocols as well, or industrial Ethernet in general. Can you speak a bit about where single pair Ethernet stands with the various industrial Ethernet protocol organizations currently?
Sure. So single pair Ethernet is a new advancement in the physical medium. So, it's the advancement from gravitating away from 4 and 8 wire traditional Ethernet physical media into the truly, single twisted pair. What that means is that it still interfaces with the industrial Ethernet protocols that we're all aware of today, things like EtherCAT, Profinet, Ethernet TCP/IP. Those will all operate over single pair Ethernet technology. It's just an advancement in the physical layer of the technology, and those protocols will communicate over this new protocol.
Okay, so you can still stay with whatever protocol you're familiar with and already have instantiated. It's just a matter of the physical layer. Got it. All right. Correct. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay. Now back to standardization for a minute. Because you explained where single pair Ethernet stands with the process of moving towards standardization with several organizations. But from a usage point of view, from an end user's point of view specifically, can you explain what standardization, why it's important to end users, OEMs, system integrators?
Sure. And I think that this is a really important point. I've touched on this kind of at length, but we're moving into a working environment where there are people that wear multiple hats. So you don't really have the engineer or the technician that's dedicated to only one thing or one technology. Within these OEMs and device manufacturers, more and more they're moving towards where people are allocated towards multiple projects, multiple different initiatives. We don't have the same level of expertise in any one topic that I would say that we had, during the third industrial revolution. Now people are, they're working on a multitude of different things, and they're going to be more and more reliant on standards moving forward. So, there's a whole wave of generation of people with product knowledge and with technology knowledge that are going to be retiring within the next few years, as well as a whole new wave of people coming out of college and out of technical programs that don't have that. And so some of that will be transitioned to these people, but I firmly believe that there will be more and more of a need for clear-cut standards for people to reference. We as a society, just don't really have the bandwidth anymore to do the sorts of in-depth investigations on our own when designing a new device, within these OEM companies. So what these standards organizations, like the ones I outlined previously, like IEEE and ODVA, what they're trying to do is really just give an acceleration point or a leg up to the technician or the engineer that's charged with finding, the new single pair Ethernet connector or speccing the new single pair Ethernet cable. That's really why these standards organizations have gone into a new level of detail of their specification, outlining specific connectors that need to be used in the specific environments, so that that engineer can open up the IEEE specification and say, this is my environment, what connector should I use? Okay, it should be the 63171-6 connector. And then that's the end of that's the end of their evaluation. They can move on to the next things that they're testing or designing. So standardization more and more in all levels of industrial automation, process automation, and the manufacturing industry in general is just going to continue to increase, in my opinion.
And it definitely speeds things up from the installation and commissioning side, and even just as you mentioned, just if you're wondering what else you can do, what's possible, it answers a lot of questions for you far more quickly. So it's definitely a benefit on the end user side. So one of the first major announcements about single pair Ethernet that I encountered was at the SPS event in Nuremberg last fall around the single pair Ethernet industrial partner network announcement. And I know that Harting plays a big role in this. They had a big event in their booth at the SPS event. So can you explain a little more about what this partner network means for industry as a whole? Again, as we mentioned about standardization, both for end users, OEMs, and system integrators?
Sure. So the partner network was formed in September of 2019 with 7 founding members, including Harting. As of the time of this recording, and to my knowledge, there's now 32 members in the group with September of 2020. So you can see a pretty exponential growth and acceptance of the single pair Ethernet industrial partner network over the last year. The reason for this is because it was formed to not only provide collaboration between component manufacturers, so that's companies like Harting that are doing the connector, companies that are manufacturing the raw cable, companies that are doing the magnetics and the semiconductor development that are required for single pair Ethernet. We're all coming together and collaborating under one umbrella instead of working in our own silos and then sharing information in a limited capacity. And the reason that we all chose to do this was that it accelerates the technology development and it creates a faster time to market for OEMs and device manufacturers. So OEMs and device manufacturers are also welcome within the group, and we've had a few of them join us that are pretty impactful, both here in North America as well as in Europe. So we're very excited about that because everybody has an equal seat at the table to say, this is my organization's vision of single pair Ethernet. This is what we're trying to accomplish as an organization, or this is what my customers are asking for me. One of the things that I'll outline right now is that in pretty much constantly in conversations that I'm having, a lot of buzz is around 10 megabit per second applications, and all the components are available for that. But the second one that I'm getting asked about the most is 100 megabit per second applications, and when will we be advancing the distances that 100 megabit per second can reach? Because a lot of customers are looking for that 200 meter to 500 meter range, which are standardization projects that are I would say at the beginning of being talked about now, but that's a big push within the industry to keep pushing the limits of single pair Ethernet, and that's what this organization aims to do. So, a component manufacturer ships their, new single pair Ethernet raw cable to Harting, and we tested in our independent testing facility under the umbrella of the single pair Ethernet industrial partner network. And, those types of things happened in the past, but not as aggressively and not as quickly. So that's one of the major benefits of it. And then also, it's kind of the task of all the member organizations within the network to be bringing single pair Ethernet out to the masses, to be doing things like I'm doing right now with this podcast, to be setting up webinars, lunch and learns, virtual tech sessions to get the market comfortable with single pair Ethernet. Have your customers heard about it? Are they interested in it? Do they have no knowledge of what it is today? And you're starting from the beginning and really educating the market. That's one of the major factors with the industrial partner network also.
All right. Thanks for clarifying that, McKenzie. That's a big help in understanding. There was so much happening on the automation front from both the technology aspect as well as the organizations around supporting it. Sometimes it can be hard to keep up with what organization is doing what. So that was a good explanation. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So one final question. At this point, are there any single pair Ethernet products available on the market now or coming soon?
Yeah, so that we're in a very exciting time where, if you wanted to start doing some single pair Ethernet development today, it's very possible to do that. As of August of this year, Harting has now fully globally launched our single pair Ethernet connector called the T1 Industrial. That is both available with the PCB mounted connector as well as the cable assembly for the T1 Industrial solution. And also, component manufacturers such as semiconductor manufacturers have 10 megabit per second chipsets available, as well as 100 megabit and gigabit speeds available. The distances vary. So I'll say, that's kind of what we're watching within the next year is what distances are available from the semiconductor manufacturers. But depending on what your speeds and distances are that you're trying to accomplish, you can start doing proof of concept designs with single pair Ethernet technology today. And another product or another couple products that Harting's going to be releasing in the near future are IP65 and IP67 circular connectors, as well as an unmanaged switch and a media converter that have the T1 industrial solution on board. So the unmanaged switch has two RJ45 connectors, so you're able to interface with technology that exists today, as well as 5 ports of the T1 industrial single pair Ethernet connector. And the media converter is a 1-to-1 converter with one RJ45 port and one single pair Ethernet T1 industrial port.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining me for this podcast, McKenzie. And of course, thanks to all of our listeners. And please keep watching this space for more installments of Automation World. Get your questions answered. And remember to visit our website at www.automationworld.com to stay on top of the latest industrial automation technology insights, trends, and news.